It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host this morning. I'm your host every morning. Appreciate those of you who are joining with us live. If you're interested, you can always join us live 8 to 10 a.m. Central. Oftentimes we don't actually run fully until 10 a.m., but you're always welcome to join us live on our website at americasvoicenow.org. Appreciate those of you who do that. Thank you. We're going to talk about a couple of topics this morning. There's some wins and losses out there, I should say. The first is that there's an announcement that Congress is looking to impeach Eric Holder because in reference specifically to the issue of the Fast and Furious debacle. Remember now that Eric Holder has already been convicted of a challenge with Congress where he refused to provide any of the documentation that Congress had requested. He's already held in contempt of Congress, both criminally and civilly. And in addition to that, if you don't remember, the president has exerted executive privilege over the documents that were requested in an attempt to essentially give him backing and protection from their evaluation. An impeachment process would perhaps open the door to actually getting some of that documentation because, the executive privilege does not extend to cover for a person who's violated the law. Our second topic is going to be the military purge and how it's continuing because, as you're aware, we've had an enormous number of top-ranking military individuals who have been relieved of command. Alan West is out there calling for a congressional review of what's going on. These are all flag-level officers, and they are from various different aspects of or different divisions or departments of the military. And I guess the question is, hey, Congress, what are you waiting for? My biggest concern, of course, is that, Congress they really appear to be completely impotent when it comes to virtually anything to do with their authority to review and modify what's going on in the country. We've seen this with Fast and Furious. We've seen it with the IRS scandal. We saw it with Benghazi. And quite frankly, we'll be lucky if they ever actually even hold a hearing related to these generals being fired. The real question is, who is the person behind all of these? And there's a lot of speculation out there, and I will admit it's speculation, but that Valerie Jarrett may be behind a lot of this purge that's going on. Valerie Jarrett is a very shadowy behind-the-scenes figure in the administration. A lot of folks don't even know who she is. They've heard her name, but they really don't understand the deep depth of her depravity, quite frankly. I would strongly encourage you to take a look at what the issues are with Valerie Jarrett. Do some homework and investigation on your own. Don't take my word for it. As a critical thinker, your obligation and your duty to yourself and your family and those in your circle of influence is to be knowledgeable about what's going on. And the only way to find that is to understand who the players are and what they're doing, to read both sides of the issue and educate yourself about what's really happening, then make informed decisions, and then take that information and pass it on within your circle of influence, however big or small that may be. Your influence circle may be as small as a couple of people at work. Maybe it's only your own family. But it does matter, and every contact, every touch matters. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Our third segment is going to be Colorado and the secession vote. Now, it's very interesting. Colorado, just before the election, and as you know, Tuesday, There were a lot of elections held in reference to the Virginia race and the New Jersey race and so forth and so on for governors. Very interesting. Colorado, just before the election, it was all over the press and the media that, they were trying to secede, and these were 5 counties in the northern section of Colorado that wanted to get away from southern Colorado because they feel that they are being oppressed by a government that is a state government that is completely out of control and out of touch with their needs, desires, and wishes. This is not the only state that's doing this. We're seeing this in western Maryland. Maryland, by the way, if you don't know, is butts right up against Washington, D.C., and the eastern portion of Maryland and the western portion of Maryland have a divide and a dichotomy between the two that is really a chasm of great depth. One, eastern Maryland is loaded with federal employees. They live and work in that area, and so their whole approach to governing and governance is completely isolated and separate from those in western Maryland. The other state that's looking to do this is Northern California. They have been trying for quite some time now to enlist enough, local assistance and help to get themselves out of the state of California. And there are a number of counties up there that are looking to secede as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. What's funny about that whole thing, by the way, is that the mainstream media right after the election talked all about all these different, Cuccinelli in Virginia and Christie in New Jersey, and how Cuccinelli failed and Christie was successful, and bantering back and forth about, what does this mean for 2014 and all of the supposition and the nonsense, right? What's really interesting is right after the election, in a successful bid to separate itself from southern Colorado, the press is completely silent. All we're hearing from them is crickets on that issue, and I liken that to the concept that let's not encourage them because it's very interesting the way that they've approached this. I mean, this is censorship, no matter how you look at it. It may be voluntary. It may be they didn't think it was a big. But I got to imagine that anytime a state secedes, it's national news, right? Cuccinelli is not national news. It's Virginian news. Christie is not national news. It's Jersey news. When you got something as big as a state that determines to secede, that's national news. And what do we hear out of the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda? Crickets. Unbelievable. All right, our fourth topic is going to be Monsanto and how they defeated a grassroots effort in Washington state to simply label your food so that you know what's in it. Now, whether or not you agree with GMOs, whether or not you agree with Monsanto's position and the fact that they've been given undue benefits by the nation, we'll talk about that. But the real question is here, why don't you have a right to know what's in your food? That's a basic question that everyone should be asking themselves. Monsanto spent $22 million to accomplish this. And here's the most important aspect of it. 550 of it came from Washington citizens. $550. Out of $22 million, the rest were agri-tyrants. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's jump into our first story this morning. Congressman Ted Yoho from Florida. I would have thought with a name like Ted Yoho, he'd be more like from Philadelphia, maybe. But anyway, sorry, that was my brief attempt at humor. He has been talking in Florida. He's out of Florida. He's a Republican. And he's been discussing with the supporters and his constituents down in Florida that they're looking to essentially draft a resolution to impeach Attorney General Eric Holder. Now, personally, I couldn't think of a better application of congressional authority than to get this guy out of office, stop him from doing the damage that he's doing to our nation, and remove a significant pin in what's holding the Obama administration together. You have to recognize that Eric Holder and the Department of Justice are the parties that are responsible for appointing and assigning any special prosecutor that would be used for anything like Benghazi, Fast and Furious, IRS scandal, NSA scandals. So you have to recognize that because they're the sole responsible party to appoint a special prosecutor, you're never going to get a special prosecutor that's going to be worth their salt. You're not going to get somebody objective. You're going to get somebody who Eric Holder handpicks, who's going to, of course, whitewash the entire thing. And so, and I don't believe, everybody can sit out there and say, well, wait a second, that's, you're painting with a broad brush. Guess what? We've got enough evidence at this point that I think we can begin to paint with a broad brush some of the issues that are going on here. We know that Eric Holder has refused to investigate a lot of what's going on right now in our country that is literally tearing this nation apart. And so I don't think it's too much supposition, if you will, to say that we would have an expectation that if Eric Holder were to appoint a special prosecutor, it would not be someone that the rest of us would look at and say, here's an objective man or woman. I just don't see it. And you see, the reason why a special prosecutor is so important is because, while Congress has the power, the House has the power of subpoena, they don't have the power to actually criminally charge anyone. And so what we've got is these long-winded hearings where everybody showboats and everybody sits up there and they get their 30 seconds of fame in front of the camera, but nothing actually is accomplished. I mean, look at what's transpired here in the Fast and Furious scandals. A couple of people were shuffled around. Nobody got fired. Look what happened in Benghazi. A few people got shuffled around. Nobody got fired. We still haven't even heard from the vast majority of the people who were actually present there. I mean, the government has gone so far as to move them around the nation and hide and change their names to prevent them from being exposed and called before Congress for hearings. The Department of State is acting as if they operate outside the congressional control and authority of Congress. I mean, it's unbelievable. This stuff is so basic in your constitutional understanding that it's inconceivable to me that they think they can get away with that. What's worse is that America is letting them get away with it, and so is Congress, and so is the Department of Justice and everybody else involved. There is no watchdog who's watching after anybody. The mainstream media is basically giving them cover, and so we as the American people are left here sitting wondering, what happened? I mean, it's shameful. It really is. And instead, Eric Holder goes on these social justice rants that he expends extraordinary amounts of money and persecutes and prosecutes states for things like trying to protect their border that the federal government has abdicated all responsibility on. Let's remember that the border is one of the actual few enumerated responsibilities of the federal government. And Eric Holder has prosecuted Arizona and Texas for attempting to do what the federal government will not do, which they are congressionally mandated to do. I mean, it's unbelievable. So Eric Holder does need to go. I'm fully behind impeachment for him because, quite frankly, I think that remember what impeachment is for. It's to stop. It's not a slap on the wrist for your behavior. It is not a penalization for that behavior. Impeachment is to cease the behavior and the activity so that no more damage can be done. That's all impeachment does. In fact, impeachment doesn't even, when a president is impeached, as we learned with Mr. Clinton, you can't even remove that person from office based purely upon impeachment. So you can be impeached and remain in office. But what it does do is it sets the tone and the tenor so that you have a great leg going forward to say, okay, now that we've gotten an impeachment behind us, this person has to go either by resignation or by, official firing, or they can a move could be at least made through Congress to remove him. It's a complicated issue as well, because don't forget that Eric Holder serves at the pleasure of the president, and so he appoints. He's not an elected official. He's an appointed official, right? And so, unfortunately, the president has the ability and the wherewithal to appoint anyone he wants to that seat. The problem, of course, with that is that if you just follow the chain of command there, I mean, the idea that Eric Holder, would be anything short of the fruit that falls far from the tree is crazy. The problem is that if Eric Holder is impeached and he's pulled out of office, where does that leave us? I mean, the president's going to appoint someone else. How do we know? Although I have to admit, I don't really think that there's a whole lot of people out there that could be worse for us as a nation than Eric Holder. They're going to try to do this when they get back to Washington, and they're going to try to do it before the end of the year, which means that it's imminent, right? I mean, here we are in November already, so you're talking about November and December. They want to do this year. And they're going to go to the Speaker of the House, who is, guess who? John Boehner. And they're going to propose this to him and say, Mr. Speaker, decide. Will you bring this up or not? Because bear in mind that the Speaker of the House has the ability to say, I'm either going to pursue this or I'm not even going to let it come to the floor for a vote. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we are pursuing our constitutional right and obligation and duty to say, we want this pursued, and pressure Boehner and the House members that are within your circle of influence, your House member respectively, to make sure that Boehner accomplishes this goal. The House Republicans are planning to approach him with this, in the next couple of days or a week. So let's start putting our efforts forth to make sure that, one, your particular House representative, whether he's Democratic or Republican, I don't even care, that the one in your region or your district is definitely on board with this. And you need to pressure them excessively. Yoho's chief of staff is Kat Kamak. He alluded in a comment to a local paper that the resolution will have a focus on the Operation Fast and Furious, because that they've already got a lot of ammunition for. In other words, the Fast and Furious aspect, where he's already been held in contempt for both criminally and civilly. Now remember, Eric Holder is the highest law enforcement officer in the land, short of the president. And he has been criminally held in contempt of Congress. Criminally. That's like saying that, the police chief got caught burglarizing houses, but we're going to leave him in office. What the heck is that? Anyway, he says, obviously, this is Kat Kamak, quote, obviously, there is a lot of frustration with our attorney general. You can name the botched programs. Fast and Furious has been one of the number one complaints we get in our office, and the question of why no one has been held accountable. And that is true. Several people from the Department of Justice have retired, and a group of them have been reassigned, but not a single official from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which was the perpetrator of this, or the Department of Justice has been fired. They've slinked away like dogs with their tails between their legs and been reassigned or reappointed somewhere else, or they retired with full benefits and all of the gratuities that go along with that. This is shameful. This is our nation. This is the rule of law. And men have died. Not just U.S. men, but we've had hundreds and hundreds of Mexican nationals who have been killed with the firearms that were incorporated into this particular event. And the truth is, Fast and Furious was nothing more than the Hegelian dialectic of, let's create a problem, wait until the groundswell of public opinion is on our side that something has to be done, and then we're going to step in and resolve the problem, but that's going to come at the cost and expense of your rights and and the individual rights and liberties of the nation. That's always the way it goes, folks. Look, Fast and Furious was nothing more than a botched false flag. That's all it was. Their goal was to get America to say, you know what, we've had enough of this nonsense. We need resolution. We've got to get these guns off the streets. Well, with all due respect, first of all, the actual level of criminality that was perpetrated by the ATF and the agents involved in this and the Department of Justice far exceeded the actual criminality that's occurring on the streets every day. So in other words, the highest law enforcement office in the land and the agency specifically tasked with gun, control, which quite frankly, in my opinion, cannot exist in the same sphere, in the same universe as liberty and freedom in the Second Amendment. But putting that aside, both of those groups are guilty of worse crimes than the street criminals that they're after. I mean, it's ridiculous. Mexico isn't flooded with guns from America. Mexico is flooded with guns that come up through their southern border and are pumped into them by all of these other international entities. This has almost nothing to... Listen, these drug dealers who are running the nation down there, and it's become a failed state. It's a narco state. The truth of the matter is, they're not counting on American semi-automatic AR-15s coming across their pike to dominate their own country. Come on, give me a break. How ridiculous a concept is that? You're talking about literally hundreds of thousands, millions of weapons in the hands of criminals. You think they all came from the United States? How stupid. So the point is simply this. We need to get rid of Eric Holder, and we need to get rid of him sooner rather than later, because the faster we get rid of this guy, the faster we're going to be able to, for all intents and purposes, get our nation perhaps back on track in some manageable format. I mean, let's be honest. Eric Holder is a danger to the nation. There is absolutely no denying it, and there's no other way to look upon it. Eric Holder is an exigent danger to freedom and liberty in the United States of America. And any other position that anyone else would want to take is hype and nonsense. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle our second topic, which is the military purge that's continuing. And the question that stands out there is, where's Congress? Why aren't they looking into this? Why aren't they investigating it? I know why we can't get an independent counsel. Eric Holder runs that little show. But why can't we get Congress to say, hey, we need some explanations for so many of these flag officers who are being removed? And to be honest with you, the numbers now are somewhere, the estimates are now somewhere in the range of 200 senior executive military have been purged out of the military. What the heck is going on? And who's behind it? That's what we need to know. What's going on and who is behind it? And that's up to these con men in Congress to find out. Now, Alan West is asking for a probe. Unfortunately, I think the only thing that these knuckleheads over and these knuckle draggers over in D.C. can probe is each other. But, the reality is we need somebody to get on the stick. You know what? We're becoming a failed state, America. We're becoming a failed state. We're not vastly different from Mexico. They're a narco-failed state. We are a fascist failed state. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll tackle that topic. You're welcome to join with us on our website at americasvoicenow.org. Please visit our Facebook page and like it. You can go there by going to Facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And remember that Facebook page is not a personal page. It's a public page. So even if you don't like Facebook because you're afraid of Facebook, and I don't blame you, it's a page you can go to and you can look at and you can review all the stories there. You can't comment, but you can participate. You can also see every video that we do on our YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Simply remember the phrase America's Voice Now, and you can find us all over the place. Type it into any browser, you'll see a dozen links. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll return in just a moment. Back. Hey, thanks for riding with us today. If you've joined us live on our website, we appreciate you. Always looking for some new folks to join with us. Tell your friends about it. If you like America's Voice and you listen to what we do, please make sure that you share us with your friends, your neighbors, your circle of influence, your family. Hey, listen, it's time for America to awaken, right? Take action. become active and participatory in the role of watchdogs of our government. We're losing our nation, folks, and we're losing it rapidly. If we do not get a hold of this thing and quickly, we're going to find ourselves so far on the outside looking in, we're not going to be able to maintain control of this government. In fact, I think we've already lost it. The issue here is that, we're seeing so many different aspects of everything that we know and believe in our nation to be under attack. Please visit our site at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/americasvoicenow, youtube.com/americasvoicenow, and you can find all kinds of information that we post up there, including the stories that we talk about every day. You'll find links and articles on there. If you're watching this on YouTube, we put them in the subject area or the description area beneath the link in our YouTube channel. So the goal here of what's going on is to find out why our military is being purged. I mean, guys, we have got a massive purge going on in our military across the board, and nobody is denying it. I mean, we're looking here at so many different representatives in the military who have been terminated at this point that we don't really even have an actual count, because we're only aware of those that are high enough ranking that they're really obvious. I mean, the rest of the military, we don't even know who has been, what do you want to call it, resigned or terminated or removed or whatever. What we do know is that we got a problem, and we better get a hold of it and figure out what the issue is. Now, Alan West, who's, of course, got a significant military background, and there's some things I agree with Alan West on and some things I don't. I've seen Alan West, he talks a good talk, but I've seen him vote sometimes in ways that I completely disagree with. I don't know the man personally. I've never actually spoken to him. I can't say, on a personal level what I believe is his take on things, but, I distrust everyone in government. You can call that overtly cynical. But the truth of the matter is, we've got a really major problem in our country. And I don't expect Congress to be doing the right things to fix it. But he is calling. Now, he's a former congressman. Remember, Alan West was defeated and moved out of Congress in the last election. And he's calling for congressional oversight hearings into this, what he calls a, quote, alarming trend. I got to tell you, whenever I hear Congress talking, it really bothers me that they use phrases like it's an alarming trend. I'm deeply concerned. Why don't we just start using politically incorrect language to discuss what's going on and saying this is an outrage and we need answers now? Stop pussyfooting around the issues and being so milquetoast and gentlemanly or gentlewomanly about it. If you look at the history of what our founders dealt with when they were in Congress, I mean, they were far more raucous and far more outspoken and far more or far less genteel than these people in Congress today. And, we keep hearing over and over and over again, well, we've got to have this nice and wonderful demeanor between Congress people so that there's, everyone's got respect for each other and all that hoopla. Let me tell you something. I've about had enough of that nonsense. I want Congress. I want Congress people who are. I want somebody who wants to pick a fight. That's what I want my congressman to do. I want him to go in there and pick a fight. And I don't care whether he's a senator or a congressperson. I want him to go in there and pick a fight. Ted Cruz went in and picked a fight. Rand Paul, he's walking in and picking fights. Mike Lee, Utah, he's going in and he's picking fights. Now look, you may not win every fight, but if your cause is righteous, if your purpose is justice, it's okay to do that. Stop believing this drummed-in mentality that you've been given all of your life. We never settle things with violence. We always resolve things by talking it out, and we let our emotions rule. Hogwash. Sometimes you just got to walk in there and lay one on his jaw. You don't sit there and try to negotiate with a terrorist, and you don't negotiate with a bully. Well, can I give you half my lunch money today? Come on, America. What's the matter with you? Why don't you get off that doggone antidepressant crap you're taking? Really, what is making America so emasculated? Where are all the men? Where are all the men in our military who are willing to stand up and say, yep, I got purged, and I don't care what it takes, I'm going to get the word out? If there's actually 200 of you, 199 of you ought to be standing up and saying, you know what? I'm going to spill the beans. I'm going to honor my oath. Who's behind all of this? Well, there's an article out on WorldNet Daily that one of the likely candidates is Valerie Jarrett. Now, if you don't know who Valerie Jarrett is, I strongly encourage you to go in and type her name into a browser, gather a lot of information on her, both pro and con. You'll see both sides of the coin. I want you to do your own homework and your own due diligence and your own study, and then you can make a decision and a determination. I'm not even going to tell you how to think of her. She's very questionable. She's a shadowy figure that runs a lot of what goes on in the White House. She is considered a tyrant by the people in the White House, if you read any of the reports. And everybody runs from this woman like she's the Dragon Queen. 9 generals and untold numbers of flag officers are being relieved. And if she is, in fact, behind it, by the way, she has no military experience. She grew up in Iran. Her father was an ambassador, I believe, over there, a businessman. I've forgotten which now. I've done a whole bunch of research on her. But, guys, I got so many facts in my head, I can't keep them all straight. And I can't remember every little factoid. So do your own homework. Don't take my word for it. Remember that part of your critical thinking exercise, excuse me, I'm drinking coffee. Part of your critical thinking exercises is to only use what you hear from me or anybody else, and I mean everybody else, as just a motivating fodder, if you will, right? We're not supposed to be the meal. We're just supposed to be the appetite wetting for you. You're supposed to sit here and do your own research to form your own opinion. I don't want you to parrot mine. And I sure as heck don't want you to parrot anything you hear on Fox News or Communist News Network or MSLSD or ABC, NBC, CBS. I don't want you to parrot what you hear and read about in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or any other paper, conservative or liberal. In fact, the truth of the matter is, true critical thinkers will dismiss all of that garbage about whether I'm on this side or that side of the ideological fence, and you'll make a determination that's unique, fair, and is balanced. And I don't mean to steal a Fox News slogan. The truth of the matter is, Fox News is not fair and balanced any more than MSNBC is fair and balanced. Why? How do I know that? Well, let me ask you this. If Fox News is so balanced, where are they on the issue of Common Core, which I did a whole story on yesterday, and I'm going to do more this month? Why do they not talk about Common Core? I mean, you catch an occasional little story coming out. But I tell you right now, if you knew the tragic extent of how far Common Core has gone towards completely, quote, transforming the American education system, you will be, by the time I finish with my series on Common Core this month, you will be not only outraged, you're going to be ready to go in and start lynching your local school boards for participating and your state governors. 46 states out of 50 have agreed to do this. No one knows how much it's going to cost. No one knows what the outcome is going to look like, and they are already. I mean, we don't even know what Common Core is the curriculum looks like, because it's going to be designed after they determine what the tests are. The teachers aren't even allowed to see the tests, folks. The heck does that mean? The problem is that, America is sitting around in its little unicorn fantasy, not taking any responsibility for your own self-sufficiency and your own self-survival. And we are in survival mode, whether you agree with it or choose to acknowledge it or not. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're in the barracks and your fort or your military outpost is under attack, do you sit there and have another cigarette, or do you get out of bed and grab a rifle and run? I mean, for crimini's sake. The call is out. They're through the wire. The barbarians aren't just at the gate. They're through the gate, and they're eating our children. What are you waiting for, America? And our top commanders are being purged by the likes of Valerie Jarrett and Barack Insane Hussein Obama. You got to be flipping kidding me. Is this the fundamental transformation you thought was coming? No. You heard the words right out of his mouth, and you didn't take that information to heart. You refused to listen and critically think through what he meant. You didn't read between the lines. This is not a condemnation of an individual listener. This is a condemnation of America as a whole. We have abandoned our responsibility and our duty to keep the torch of liberty alive and hand it off to our progeny. And we're the first generation, for crimini's sake, in all of known history to do that, or all known U.S. history. I mean, our parents are remembered as the greatest generation because they fought in World War I and World War II and Korea. We're going down in history as the world's stupidest generation because we're allowing our entire liberty and our freedom and our republic, our guaranteed Republican form of government, has nothing to do with the party, our Republican form of government, to slide through our hands like water or sand. It's insane. Where is the American outrage? You know, I posted something up on Facebook today, and I'm going to read it to you because it's a Founding Father statement. You know, I like to interject these when they're appropriate. But this one is particularly relevant to today's discussion because it's so accurate about where we sit. This is from a guy by the name of Edward Rutledge. And you can find this by going to our Facebook page. Even if you're not a Facebook member, you can still get onto the page and you can see all the stuff up there. It's facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Here's what it says. I always considered an idle life as a real evil, but a life of such hurry, such constant hurry, leaves us scarcely a moment for reflection or for the discharge of any other than the most immediate and pressing concerns. So let's evaluate that statement for a moment in light of where we stand as a nation. I'm assuming we're all relatively close in age. I mean, I'm sure there's no 10-year-old sitting here watching, and I'm sure that there's no 100-year-old sitting here watching. We're all from the same generation. Well, do you remember that when you were a kid that both parents didn't always have to work, or that's kind of when it started? But, you know, prior to World War II, you know, and I'm not degrading women when I say this, but most women didn't work in the workplace. And most families weren't under such constant financial pressure as they are now. They worked at home. Oh, I'm not taking anything away from a woman who works at home. But the simple truth is this. We don't have an idle life, and the reason we don't is because we are in this constant state of hurry. We are in this constant state of stimulation. We are stimulated constantly to do this, do that, hurry up, I'll go over here, take the kids over there, run over here. And at the end of the day, we're just physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted. We don't have the time to sit down and write a letter to our congressman. Or we commit to do so, and then all hell breaks loose during the course of the day, and you can't get to it. And then the next thing you know, you hear on the news the vote was cast and your idea was defeated. You know why? Because our society and our government wants you in a state of constant chaos. That is the truth. Think about it. They want our military in a state of constant chaos. Why purge all these generals? Because they won't stand up and toe the line that they're told they're told that they have to toe in order to retain their position and their careers. And those who are willing to sacrifice their nation for their career are literally in a state of betrayal. I'm going to read it to you again. His name is Edward Rutledge. I always considered an idle life as a real evil, but a life of such hurry, such constant hurry, leaves us scarcely a moment for reflection or for the discharge of any other than the most immediate and pressing concerns. That means we're so busy scrambling around trying to pay the bills, we're not paying attention to the fact that literally hundreds of senior military flag and executive officers are being purged out of the military. Listen, that's unprecedented, to use the president's favorite phrase. And it is fundamentally transformative of our military. Something is going on there. And look, I'm a flea on the elephant's butt. How do I investigate that? I don't have the resources, even as an investigative reporter, to go out there and try to identify that. And neither do you. So we have to rely on people like Congress, who are so corrupted and coerced and co-opted that these guys can't identify and prove that, Eric Holder was destructive of his own responsibilities towards Fast and Furious. I mean, guys, come on. Our prosecutions in this country, the old phrase, you can indict a ham sandwich? We can't get Congress to indict Lois Lerner, for crying out loud, who got caught illegally with people's personal tax information on her personal email account, which is already illegal. Not the fact that she's got personal tax information, that's illegal. The fact she's got a personal email account is illegal too. And Congress is sitting there saying, well, we'll get to it. Where's the media? The other source of watchdog. Our Congress has betrayed us. They're incapable and impotent. They're castrated, chemically or otherwise. They are useless because they owe too much allegiance to people, organizations, and groups who hold dirt on them. What do you think the NSA thing is really all about, folks? And if you don't think for a minute that that's one of the key factors in getting these people to resign, you're wrong. You're ignoring the truth and the reality that ought to be screaming, claxons ringing in your head. I get it. You're busy. You don't have time for reflection. You don't have time to discharge anything other than the most urgent and pressing need. But you know what? You better make time. And I'm going to tell you why. We're about to lose this nation. And when we fall into the domestic terrorist activity that this fascist dictatorship has in mind for you, everything that you are scurrying around trying to salvage and save and scrape and hold together is going to be lost. Your freedom of speech, your freedom of religion, the free press, as if there is any more anyway, at least none in the mainstream arena. The alternative media, great. But let me tell you something. When free speech is clamped down upon, you'll never even know they're disappearing in the flock. What we are seeing is incredible abuse. A long train of abuses and usurpations. And everybody's standing around saying, when is somebody going to do something about it? Well, with all due respect, I would encourage you, I would ask you politely, and then demand, if you refuse to listen, that you go to americasvoicenow.org and you read the story that's right at the top of the page. I've published it. It's literally had, 100,000 people or something have seen it and read it. But I'm encouraging you to go look at it. It's entitled "The Plan to Take Back America," place all state and federal capitals under civil disobedience siege. Peaceful, massive civil disobedience. And I'm talking about on a national scale, and I'm not talking about a couple of 100,000 people to go march on Washington. I'm talking about 20 million. Stop worrying about, oh my goodness, I would lose my job and then I would lose my Lexus. I'd have to turn in my Prius. I couldn't pay for it. Let me tell you something. When this thing comes down, you're going to lose that Prius and the job that you so blindly follow. You're going to lose your right to free speech, your right to worship the way you choose. You're going to lose your right to a free press. You're going to lose your Second Amendment. You're going to lose, you've already lost your Fourth Amendment. The vestiges of what's left are going to immediately evaporate. Your Fifth Amendment right is already gone. Did you know that the Supreme Court has said in a ruling that unless you state, I am exercising my Fifth Amendment right even at a local pullover, that your silence is your guilt? Go look it up. I dare you. I triple dog dare you. America, what are you waiting for? I mean, the Eighth Amendment has been so violated at this point. It's like that guy out of that story I posted up on our sites the other day from New Mexico. Guy got pulled over and the cops said he looked like he was clenching his buttocks. So they took him to the hospital and they wanted to do an anal probe to identify whether he had drugs. The first doctor said, that's unethical. I'm not doing it. So they took him to another emergency room and 8, ladies and gentlemen, count it, 8 times they probed this guy in his rectum, twice with fingers, twice with enemas, once with a colonoscopy, and 2 others with X-rays. Are you telling me that the Eighth Amendment, restriction and prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment for prisoners is not eviscerated? This guy wasn't even convicted of anything, and guess what they found? Nada, squat, nothing. And you know what the cops' defense was? We follow our procedures. Wow, that's a procedure? Oh, I get it, it's a procedure. But I mean, that's lawful police procedure? To violate a guy 8 times? I mean, at what point do you say, maybe after the first or second probe, hey, I guess he doesn't have anything? Or maybe there was something a little bit more sadistic and willful about it. America, aren't you aware of what's going on? The Purge surge, as we call it, is indicative of just another example of tyranny being heaped upon you. I mean, how many top generals are we going to get? Listen, I hope these guys are oath keepers who are getting kicked out, at least. Maybe they'll have the courage and the fortitude at that point to stand up and say, you know, when this whole thing comes down, I'm gonna take a leadership role. I'm praying they do. All right, we're going to take a break. It's almost so depressing, guys. I get it. But, you know, the goal of this is not to get you depressed. The goal of this is to awaken you and make you aware of what's going on around us so that somebody can take active action. You got to do so in a grassroots effort. So I'm pleading with you. Go to our website and go find that story, The Plan to Take Back America. Place all state and federal capitals under civil disobedience siege. And let's walk like Egyptians, for crimini's sake, and 20 million of us go march on Washington in a true concerted effort with absolute guaranteed commitments. None of this I'll show on Facebook. And then when it comes to the day that everybody's supposed to appear there, everybody's suddenly got to go to they've got to go to the toenail clipper doctor. Please. Well, I don't want to be on video because they're using that new facial recognition system. Well, isn't that proof enough that you ought to be worried? The same things you fear ought to be the same things that you're listening to as the klaxons ringing in your head. The fact that you fear it is the reason why you should be stopping it. All right, we're going to take a break. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Please find us on the web by going to americasvoicenow.org. You can find us, we post all kinds of stuff up there. By the way, we've got a brand new app up there where you can listen to our podcast on audio. So if you want to jump on there, and I'm going to shortly have a download capability for you as well, so that if you want to download it onto a phone and listen to it at your leisure, as an example, you can do that. We've had a lot of requests for that, and I apologize, but I'm a one-man band. I can only do so much. Please find us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and then our YouTube channel where you can see all the videos of everything that we do. And you can go there by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be back in just a moment, and when we come back, we're going to tackle Colorado's secession vote. It was successful. Where's the Ministry of Propaganda? Crickets.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host. And our goal, our mission in life is to dispel the propaganda that you are fed daily by the mainstream media. To expose the truth and give you, if nothing else, the motivation to go out there and gather the information so that you can make informed, critical thinking, independent decisions and opinions on the truth. My clarion call is, wake up, America. We're coming apart at the seams. I'm like Paul Revere out there, and I'm not giving myself any undue credit here, but I mean, look, I'm no Paul Revere, but you know, I'm out there every day trying to awaken and enlighten people to say, you know what? I've been resisting, accepting, and acknowledging this all along, but it's time that I finally had a conversation with the guy in the mirror and said, okay, I just have to admit that we have gone beyond salvage at this point. That's all it takes. Introduce the idea and let your mind think of it. Open your mind and stop sitting on this ideological fence. You know, 5 counties just did that in Colorado. They seceded. Did you hear what I just said? 5 counties have just voted to secede and form the 51st state. Now, the election just happened on Tuesday, 2 days ago. And before the election, it was all over the media. Colorado's trying to secede. There's 5 counties that want to separate because they're not happy with what's going on. You know, Colorado has gone from this red state conservatism, and over the course of the last, I guess decade or so, but especially in the last 5 years, they've gone so far over to the left that, they've legalized marijuana, which, by the way, interestingly enough, is a principle in use of nullification that nobody seems to want to agree or admit is nullification. You nullified federal law by saying, despite what federal law says, we're going to do what's right for our citizens. I don't care whether you agree or disagree with marijuana. But why is it then when a state decides to use nullification principles to legalize marijuana, the press is all for it? But when they want to use nullification to legalize and confirm your Second Amendment right, Oh, my goodness. You can't do that. The Supremacy Clause supersedes all state desires. Give me a break. You know what their quote is after this election? We have established a beachhead for secession. Thank you, Northern Colorado. We in America, millions of patriots, hopefully tens of millions of patriots, thank you for having the courage of your convictions, the belief, the knowledge, the wisdom, the insight to recognize the problem and to do something about it. And we're grateful. I personally am thankful. And you've given a new outline to other states that seek to do the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Colorado's not alone. Northern California has been trying to do this for, I don't even know, a decade or more. Western Maryland has come out and talked about seceding away from Eastern Maryland. Everybody in Eastern Maryland works for the federal government. No wonder they're sycophantically approving every little thing that comes down the pike. The people who they owe their allegiance to and they're living to are the ones making the rules. For the first time since the Civil War, folks, 5 counties in Colorado have voted to instruct their elected officials in those counties to pursue the possibility of creating a new 51st state. That is a coup. And mark my words, when I say coup, I do mean coup d'etat. It's a coup d'etat to separate yourself. It's a revolution to separate yourself from tyranny. And if it's only started at a state level, that's okay with me. At least the ball is in motion now. The issue was on 11 county ballots. But at the end of the night, Phillips County, Cheyenne County, Kit Carson County, Yuma County, and Washington counties voted in favor. The rest said no. Jeff Hare, the founder of the 51st State Initiative, this is what he says. This is an important moment for liberty. Wow. I'm not sure he understands how much impact that statement actually has. This is an important moment for liberty. We have 5 counties in this state that have said they want to exercise their rights under the state constitution and secede. You want to know why? Because our founders made it very clear to us that if we recognized that there were problems that were insurmountable via the political solutions that are given to us in our Constitution, that we as individuals have the right to abolish that government, and if we cannot abolish it because we're in the minority, then we have the right to secede away from it and create a new libertarian, new Republican form of government that is more in line with our needs, our desires, and our God-given rights. You know, it's imperative that we recognize how important this is. And I got to tell you, the media was talking about this. I heard stories about it, generally in little blurbs. Not, nobody did a great expose on it. There's probably not a 60-minute special or something. Not that I'd spend a lot of time watching 60 Minutes. I don't. But my point is this. The media was talking about it. But after the election, it's all about Virginia and Cuccinelli, and it's all about Chris Christie in New Jersey. Well, guess what? I got to tell you, this has more impact on a national level than those stories do. Ultimately, the guy who's sitting in the governor's seat in either Virginia or New Jersey has impact on only 2 out of 50 states. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a much bigger issue. And I submit to you that one of the reasons that the sycophantic press, the Ministry of Propaganda, is silent on this, and that all you hear is the sound of crickets, is because they don't want anybody else to recognize this for what it is. The first shot heard round the world in this century. The people of this state have the sole and exclusive right of governing themselves as a free, sovereign, and independent state, and to abolish and alter their constitution and form of government whenever they deem it necessary to their safety and happiness, provided such change be not repugnant to the Constitution of the United States. That's in Article 2 of the Colorado Constitution. God bless these patriots, these constitutional, liberty-minded, freedom-minded patriots, for having the courage to stand up and actually use that Constitution as the flaming sword that it is meant to be. This is the second time, by the way, I want to point something out to you, that Colorado has done what no other state is willing to do. They also just recently, if you recall, this was just in the news, they recalled 2 state Democratic senators. These are the 2 who approved and piloted and led the charge against the Second Amendment rights of the citizens of Colorado. Colorado instituted draconian gun laws. I mean, stuff that's like New York City kind of draconian gun regs. Who'd have thunk in Colorado, right? They used an article out of their Constitution, I think it was their Article 11, to recall these 2 state senators who voted in favor of these gun control measures. Kudos to them. America should be clapping because Colorado is the one who is setting the pace, the tone. They're the ones who are showing us the measure of the bar. The truth is, everyone else should be looking to them and saying, we want to emulate that liberty and that love for liberty and freedom that they are not only cognizant of, but exercising and expressing. That's the difference. You see, Colorado is taking action where the rest of the other 49 states who are disenfranchised, disenchanted, are milling about like cattle, confused. Hare, he's the guy who kicked this thing off. He had a couple of comments that are in this article, and it's on WorldNet Daily. It's linked here in this YouTube posting if you're watching this on YouTube. If not, it's on WND.com. WND, like WorldNetDaily.com. Counties plunge forward with their plan for a new state. WorldNet Daily, by the way, is alternative media, and make no mistake about it, that's a great place for you to gather information. They're quite religious, and I don't care what your religious beliefs are. The reason I say that to you is because I don't want you to be dissuaded when you get on there and you see stuff about, from the religious right. Your job and duty as a critical thinker and as a patriot is to read all sides. I'm not saying I agree with everything that WND does and produces, but they are a great source of alternative media that will tell you the stuff that the rest of the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda will not even entertain discussing. Anyway, Hare has a couple of comments in the article here, and I encourage you to go read it yourself. Since this movement began a few months ago, we went from 0 to 43% approval, even in the counties that voted against the issue. Wow, that's quite a statement, folks. This is especially significant when you consider that, unlike other ballot initiatives, there was no organized campaign in support of the measure. The most we did was a few radio ads and Facebook posts. We didn't have time or money to have meetings advocating the issue. In spite of this, large percentages of voters said they wanted to leave the state. Folks, let me tell you something. I know, and I read you this quote earlier, and I think it was the last segment, but I'm going to read it to you again. I know that you're harried, and I know that you're swamped. Edward Rutledge said this. He was a framer. I always considered an idle life as a real evil. But a life of such hurry, such constant hurry, leaves us scarcely a moment for reflection or for the discharge of any other than the most immediate and pressing concerns. So I understand. I get exactly where you're coming from. We're swamped. You know, we're just trying to make ends meet. We're afraid that we're not going to be able to pay the electric bill or the gas bill, or that little Bobby or little Cindy is not going to be able to get to the ball game on time, and they're going to be disappointed, and blah, 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 blah. But I got to tell you something. Is their future, is the future of this nation not more important than all of those things that we worry about? Isn't your right to hand off the torch of liberty and freedom to your children more important than whether or not they make the ball game on time? I went to a meeting yesterday with a gal who talked about Common Core. She's just a mom. And she's not a politician. She's not running for anything. She's not trained in any of the, the concepts of going out and presenting to people. She's got degrees. She's educated. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But she's not a professional, rabble-rouser, if you will. She's just a mom who's got 3 kids, and she started looking at this Common Core thing and saying, holy smoke, I can't believe what they're teaching my kids. And so yesterday, she drove probably 250, maybe 300 miles to come to my town and put on a presentation about Common Core to educate those around her. She paid for it out of her pocket. She didn't even ask for there was a couple people there from this group, Missourians Against Common Core and Moms Against Common Core. You can look them both up on the internet. I encourage you to do so. I live in Missouri. Our governor has approved it without even going to the legislature about it. The legislature is now being asked for $629 million to support it. And they're like, what Common Core? What is this? We never even heard of it before. Well, we're already implementing it, and we need the money to finish it. And Congress and the House, the legislature in the state of Missouri is like, Common what? Well, don't ask us too many questions. Just give us the money. When you find out what the core of Common Core really is, let me tell you something. Your stomach's going to flip, and then it's going to churn, and then it's going to burn. But this woman literally took time away from her family, 3 kids and a husband, to come down here and do this presentation. And I tell you, I've seen a lot of presentations in my life, and I've given a lot of them. She wasn't the most professional presenter I've ever seen, but she did an excellent job. Her stuff was well organized. She had a lot of empirical documents and proof. That's what mattered. In fact, it wasn't her speaking that was so critically important to the meeting. What she said wasn't quite as important as the information she presented. She gave everyone in that meeting empirical proof of the danger and the tragedy of what Common Core is, without professional training and all that hoopla. So my point is this. I know you're harried. I know you're scared. I know you're worried. I know you're frustrated. I know you're broke. Don't you see that that's part of the program? Keep them in chaos. Keep them in this tornado, this whirlwind that they can never quite figure out. They can't. I've often used the analogy that the current mode we're in is kind of like it's kind of like being on ice. You just can't quite, and you start to slip, and no matter how many times you move your feet, you just can't quite get your balance, and that throws you off this way, and then you try to make an adjustment, and you go the other way. That's what this is like. Or another analogy is that it's like gravity has left the earth. And here we are floating around, and we can't seem to grab a hold of anything, and we can't get any traction. I get it. I understand it. I see it. I smell it. I taste it. I feel it. I do it. It's in me too. But, people like Stacy, people like me, hopefully people like you, we're taking the time out of our lives, irrespective of what else we've got going on, to stand up and do the right thing. And you cannot leave us and abandon us and make us do it alone. Because we're sitting here fighting for you. I mean, it's so important that this is what Colorado has done. Yes, it was to their benefit. But guess what? They benefited each of us. And how do we know that? Because the statement, the quote that opens the article is this: "We have established a beachhead for secession." That is a powerful statement. Because a beachhead means that someone has paid the price to establish that location. Someone, think of Normandy and how many military men died to establish that beachhead. The enemy fought furiously to push them back. But wave after wave of brave and courageous men went to their deaths to establish that beachhead so that others, and in some cases, using their bodies as shields, could continue the fight. We have established a beachhead for secession. A beachhead means we're supposed to follow suit. That means that the gate has fallen down on our transport, and it's time for us to get out there and get our feet wet and run for shore. No matter how busy, no matter how frightened, no matter how terrified, no matter how intimidated we are. You think those men who ran on that beach in Normandy and have done it in 1,000 other locations, you think they weren't scared? You think they weren't mumbling a prayer as they ran forth? Gosh. America, what are you waiting for? Will you let your fear handcuff you? Chain you to a life of misery, and chain and envelop your children and your progeny and the generations that will come after in a life of misery and hopelessness? Is that the measure of you? Is that the measure of you? They've established a beachhead. Not just for secession, for liberty, for freedom, for the right for you to say, I'm going to take this and I'm going to use it to strengthen me and fight in my own way for my nation, my country, my state, my city, my family, my children. And I don't care whether that fight takes the form of secession or whether that fight takes the form of Second Amendment rights, First Amendment rights, Common Core, get on the school board, go to city council and kick the bums out who have been turning your city into some kind of a little fascist dictatorship. Whatever form it takes, do it. Hide behind the bodies of those who have come before us. Stand upon their shoulders. There's no white horse. There's no knight in shining armor who's riding to our salvation, who's going to rout the enemy for us. My father fought on Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima in World War II. He was one of those guys that ran out of that transport and waded through water where his friends were floating face down, and the water was red with the blood of his friends, the entrails of his comrades. Are we any less worthy to stand up and do what's right? Is it not our duty, our job, our obligation to honor the sacrifice that they have made to establish that beachhead? And I don't care what that beachhead is. It's a 237, 35-year-old beachhead. And now, while we're in a position where we can actually win the day without even having to fire a shot, but we sit around and we're impotent. We are impotent, cowering in fear and desperation, using the excuse of Johnny's got to go to the ball game. My boss wants this report done. I got to make dinner. I got to do the dishes. Well, maybe everybody just got to eat sandwiches tonight. I'm going to leave you with this, and then we're going to take a break. These are words which you should be able, and go look them up on the internet, or you can find them on my website. This is a phrase that you should read every single day. I don't care if you print it out and you put it on a little business card, or you put it on your desk, or you put it over the computer that you work at, or you put it on the handle of the shovel that you dig ditches with. I don't care if you stick it on the dashboard of your car, but it should be a living reminder to us of how exigent our circumstances truly are, and motivate us to take action every single day, to fight for liberty and freedom, because it's all we truly have. Everything else that you're worried about losing is dust in the wind. Still, if you will not fight for the right, when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as slaves. Winston Churchill. God, That is a powerful statement that should be the living mantra of us every single day. If you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory is sure and will not be too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as a slave. Whew. Man, if that don't hit you right between the eyes, you must be bulletproof. We're going to take a break. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can find us at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And you can find every program that we do on YouTube at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. That quote I gave you is from Winston Churchill. You can find it by going to America's Voice Now and reading the story, The Plan to Take Back America, Place All State and Federal Capitals Under Civil Disobedience Siege. Man, America, let's take action. We'll be right back. Said MacArthur. You know, I know sometimes my passion and my belief is so strong it frightens folks. I know that. Not frightens them in a bad way, but I don't want it to frighten you. I want it to convict you. I want it to be an indictment that compels you to change your behavior, to change the way, the path that you are on. And I'm an intense person. I don't deny that. Everything I do is intense, and I put 125% into everything. Not always successful at it. And you may not even agree with the methodology. You may not agree with the presentation. You know, I've had somebody on Facebook say, or one of those YouTube comments, this guy is, his dramatic pauses. That's who I am. That's how I speak. Can't change that. You may not agree with that. You may not even like it. But I got to ask you, doesn't the message resonate with you? Because if it does, then I've served my purpose. I've indicted and convicted you. Not in a bad way, in a way to show, educate, inform, motivate you to be active, to be activated. That's why we use the mantra: educate, inform, motivate, and activate. It's imperative that somebody rally the troops. Somebody's got to do that. You may not like the particular manner or method by which I rally the troops. But, for those of you who would be a naysayer out there, let me ask you, what are you doing? Or are you just sitting around in your underwear in your basement typing in negative comments? Things are getting dicey. And I don't think most people have either acknowledged or are willing to acknowledge how dicey they really are. I mean, the topic for this particular episode or segment is Monsanto and how they defeated grassroots efforts in Washington State in this last election. The segment I just did was about Colorado seceding and how that should be a motivating factor for us. And it was a part of the, election that just occurred, right? But are you cognizant of the fact that at the same time we were just defeated only in Washington State, I'll grant you that. But we were just defeated in something as simple as getting a true labeling law that says you should know when your food is genetically modified. Is that too much to ask? Where's the FDA on this issue? I mean, they put warning labels on everything for every ridiculous, idiotic thing. I mean, you tear open a new product you buy and it's wrapped in a plastic bag. And what do they make them put on the bag? Do not allow your child to put this over their head so they won't suffocate. But we can't get them to force food producers to put a label on a can that says this product contains genetically modified organisms that are and have been proven to be empirically dangerous to your health. Gee, I wonder where their motives came from. And you know how Monsanto accomplished it? They spent $22 million. $22 million to defeat an initiative on a state ballot. You want to know what's even worse? Out of that $22 million, guess how much of it came from average, everyday Joe Six-Pack citizens in the state of Washington? $550. Mm-hmm. $550 lousy, measly, dirty dollars. So that means that all the rest of that $22 million, it all came from the industry that is, and I can tell you who they are. They're listed here in this article. This is from InfoWars. DuPont, Bayer, Monsanto, Dow AgroSciences. These are the same corporations that, one, dominate the food supply, and two, and more importantly, stand to gain financially by you not knowing what's in your food supply. Is it too much to ask that you know what's in your food? I don't think so. And as much as the Colorado secession vote that I talked about in the last segment, as much as that was a victory, this was a defeat. A defeat by money against grassroots citizen movement. Well, for the record, Mexico has banned genetically modified corn. Banned it. The Mexican court has ruled, effective immediately, no genetically engineered corn can be planted in the country. The island of Kauai has passed a law that mandates that farms who use different pesticides must disclose the presence of those pesticides and whether or not they are genetically modified crops. I'm going to give you a website I want you to go to. So get out your pen and get out your paper and write this down. It's called truthfarmer.com. Truthfarmer.com. This is run by a friend of mine, a wonderful and brilliant patriot, Doreen Hannes. Doreen is very knowledgeable, extraordinarily committed, like the woman I was telling you about in that last segment about the Common Core. Just, another regular American. She puts this blog up at her own cost and expense. She goes out to speak at different groups. She co-chairs a PRC, a Property Rights Council coalition, all voluntarily. Nobody pays her anything. I mean, everybody goes at those PRCs and they drop $1 or $2 in a can to help cover her cost for gasoline to drive out there. But, I mean, nobody pays her way. Nobody pays my way. I do this voluntarily. Nobody pays Stacy's way from Moms Against Common Core. We're just citizens. We are the grassroots. Maybe we're the loudest bells on the cow, but when we see stuff like this where Monsanto throws $22 million at defeating a grassroots initiative that actually does nothing other than give you one more bit of information by which you can make an informed decision about your own health and your own welfare and that of your family and the children that you're feeding with that product, I got to tell you, it's discouraging. How is it that the people in Washington state could be so blinded that they would reject an initiative that says, all you got to do is put on the label of the can what's in the can? How can the public be so brainwashed? And how can they be so brainwashed for a mere $22 million? I got to tell you, go to Doreen's website at truthfarmer.com and look at some of the empirical proof of the studies that have been done about genetically modified organisms. And oh my gracious, you will go through your cabinets and start throwing stuff out. Why is it that nations around the world are banning genetically modified organisms, but the United States refuses to do so? Why is it that my state senator, Roy Blunt, who's a Republican and theoretically a conservative, when Roy uses the word conservative, that means he wants to conserve what we have. And frankly, where we stand right now ain't worth conserving. We live in a police state ruled by a bunch of plutocrats and autocrats and corporatocracies. And he, because Monsanto is headquartered in my home state in St. Louis, Monsanto wrote a bill called we call it the Monsanto Protection Act. Wait, I mean, if you don't know what this is, if this is their first time understanding this, or you've just kind of heard it peripherally, I don't know what a GMO is. Let me tell you what the Monsanto Protection Act states. And then you tell me how much money it took to bribe a senator and a whole bunch of other senators to pass this, and House members. You know what the Monsanto Protection Act says? All right, I'm going to give it to you in a nutshell. It says that even with the empirical proof that is out there, the medical studies and the diagnoses that have been done, and all of the empirical science, that genetically modified products are dangerous to your health, lead to early onset of cancer and Alzheimer's and diabetes and a host of other life-destroying diseases. Even with all that empirical proof, Monsanto has a free pass from all limitations. Let me explain to you how that works. In this bill, for the first time in history, for the first time in the history of America, perhaps in the first time in the history of the world, a company has been given a get-out-of-jail-free card. And here's what it says. Despite all the empirical proof out there, Monsanto was protected and immunized and can operate with impunity, that no criminal nor civil lawsuit can be brought against them by any citizen based on government guarantee in this act, nor can any future legislation be passed to eviscerate that statement. What the heck does that mean? I mean, we can... Let's understand the magnitude of this. We can change our Constitution with an amendment, and yet Monsanto is given a 100% pass that no Congress in the future or this one can modify its right to produce and deliver and have eaten by America a product which is known to be dangerous. Just put that in your pipe for a minute and smoke it. My goodness. I mean, what kind of insanity is that? What kind of treason is that? And I'll tell you right now, I don't care what of the 50 states you're in, the odds are extraordinarily high that your alleged representatives voted for it and approved it. Some of them. Multiple times. Do you know how many hundreds of millions of dollars a year Monsanto spends to bribe lawmakers and legislators? Folks, it's criminal malfeasance on the recipient's part of that money to accept it and follow the act of Monsanto and whatever they want to do. Monsanto wrote the act and then gave the money to Roy Blunt to get it approved. Roy was the sponsor. He got a bunch of co-sponsors on. And walla walla bing bong, here it goes. Races through Congress like crap through a goose. Most Americans don't even know what happened. Go type into your browser the Monsanto Protection Act. Yeah, my own traitorous senator is responsible for that. I'm embarrassed to say. And a Republican at that. So anytime you think that I take a biased position on one side of the political or ideological fence or another, let me tell you something. My goal and my motivation is this. I'm not biased. I hate all politicians of any stripe, any color, any shape, any size, any form. You know why? Because all of them are co-opted, compromised, coerced, and traitorous. There's not a single one that is not in some way, shape, or form betrayed their constituencies. Oh, I got a couple of names I can give you of people who have acted responsibly. But the truth is that 99.9% of the 535 people who represent this nation, allegedly represent this nation, have betrayed it. And I got to tell you something. Statistically speaking, in your own state legislature, the numbers are probably not a whole lot different. Yeah, you got Ted Cruz out there. And I applaud what Ted Cruz did and what he does. He's actually, for the first time, stepping up and saying, I'm going into Congress and I'm walking in here as a warrior swinging a sword. That's what I want. That's what I want from my congressman. I want him to go in there and start a fight. I want my representative to walk in there and say, I'm going to change what's going on here. And I'm not taking money from Monsanto. And I'm not taking money from all of these lobbying groups on K Street. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to kick him right in the shins. And when he looks up at me in surprise, I'm going to land one crack right on his jaw. That's what I want my representative to do. I don't mean physically. I'm talking analogously here. I want him to walk right up to the industry giant, the agri-tyrants in the country, in this particular instance, and I want him to walk up there and have that agri-tyrant smile at him and say, oh, good morning, Senator. I am so pleased to see you. And as he slips out the $5,000 handshake, I want my senator to haul back with his right leg and kick him so hard square in that shin. And when the industry tyrant looks up at him in surprise and his eyes open up to the size of saucers, I want him to follow it up with a right cross to the jaw. That's what we put him in office for. Not to sit there and accept bribes while selling us and our birthright out like a bowl for a bowl of Esau's soup. Let me tell you something. Your Congress people aren't any different than mine. If you're one of those people who says, everybody in Congress ought to be kicked out, but my congressman, he's responsive. She's responsive to me. You're fooling yourself. Go have a frank conversation with yourself in the mirror. But America, it's time to arise. It's time to be counted. It's time to be fierce, to be fearless, to be courageous. It's time to speak out, even when your voice shakes. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. I appreciate you riding with us this morning. I know sometimes I get intense, but that's because I believe firmly and strongly in what we need to do as a nation. But I can't do it alone. It either comes with a massive, peaceful, civil, disobedient movement in this country of literally tens of millions of us. Or I'll just be the first sheep to get my head lopped off when I raise it up. Question is, are you going to stand with us? With me? It doesn't have to be me per se. You may not even like what I do or how I do it. But you know what? Put that out of your head for a moment and forget the delivery guy and just accept the package. If you don't like the UPS delivery guy, you don't like the way he looks, you don't like the way he talks, you don't like his method of delivery, that's okay. But the package is here in front of you. The knowledge is here in front of you. And that's all the motivation you need to open the box. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Thanks for riding with us this morning. I appreciate you. Please find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and our YouTube channel at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. In fact, just type in America's Voice Now into any browser and you'll find us all over the place. We have a brand new podcast format up on our website right below the video window, which is alive only, obviously, when we're streaming live. Listen, share us with your friends. You know, your friends may not be as against the delivery as you are, so the delivery man. So, you know, share us with your friends and say, you know what, I don't even care if you don't watch the video. Just listen to it, and maybe this guy will make some sense. We need every patriot we can get. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless.